speak with as many people as you can, but always know how to listen and what to learn from every type of conversation, from every interaction.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Adam Frank. And Adam was born in Australia and moved to Jerusalem when he was around 8 years old. Joined the Army or the Air Force. You'll have to remind me which one it is. I was there for about a year and then ended up leaving that and did some analytics. I think it was for the Air Force, and then studied computer science, got an MBA as well. Did some interesting work on Twitter correlations with presidential campaigns. So we'll have to hit on that. And then worked for a startup as a student, continued to work for that startup after graduating, then decided to do his own startup with a partner. Partner had a bit of hesitation, so had to convince him to do the startup, got funded, scaled quickly, pivoted in a new direction and changed things around a bit, and then has arrived at a bit where they're at today. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Adam.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for that great introduction. A pleasure to be here. How you doing?
Absolutely. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30-second version of it. So let's unpack that just a bit. So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in Australia and Israel and how things got going from there.
Okay. So yeah, I was born in Australia 35 years ago. I lived in Melbourne, and then at the age of 8, my parents just decided that it's about time for us to go and move to Israel, the promised land. We're Jews, so we have to go and live in Israel. So that was my parents' ideology. Nobody asked me. As soon as I knew, I just popped here in Israel, started my life. It was quite a change.
And I say, okay, and I'm sure that the difference between Israel culture and Australia is a bit of a different contrast, and sounds like it'd be a good move and was beneficial. Now, I think at one point as you're growing up, you joined, was it the Army or the Air Force? I couldn't remember which one it was.
Right. So I joined the Air Force in the Army. I was there for 5 years. The first year I was in the flight academy, and then after a year they kicked me out. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. They usually start from like the first interview, 20,000, and they finish with 50 pilots every 6 months. So when they kicked me out, we were 100 people out of the 20,000. So I was very, very close to graduating. And then after the flight academy, I went to the intelligence units within the Air Force. So I was an officer there for 4 other years.
And that makes sense. And so, and I have a brother-in-law that's also as an Air Force, and he flew for a while. And now he's moved over to doing some drone piloting and other areas of his career. But sounds like, I think in every country, being the elite or flying the planes, even if you're awesome at it, it's still a very competitive program. So sounds like your experience was very similar. But now moving over to analytics, sounds like it was a great opportunity. So now as you're coming out of the Air Force or finishing up there doing the analytics, then I think you moved on or then continued on and studied computer science and got an MBA. Is that right?
Right. So then I went to study computer science at the Hebrew University. And it was a really great degree, and I was exposed to so many amazing things in the math world and in the algorithm world, and it was great. As a matter of fact, that's when I actually met Idan, my co-founder, and that was also the first time that we were actually exposed to the creator economy. When we were studying for tests, we were following small size creators who are explaining really hard algorithms and interesting things that we just couldn't understand during the lectures. So at the time it was really trivial that we would reach out to those creators and ask questions. But they never answered us. So that was the beginning of who we are today, Vizio. But we'll get there. But at the end of the day, we reached out to so many creators, and nobody answered us.
Now
Yeah.
you're doing all that, and so you're getting the computer science, you're doing the MBA, and you're also reaching out to creators. Now, circling back to one other thing that is off topic but on topic that you mentioned is you also, I think, while you're at school, and correct me if it was during school or after, you also worked on a Twitter correlations campaign for presidential campaigns, or understanding the correlation. Is that right?
Yep. So after my first degree, I immediately continued to my MBAs. And the final project there was with a really great professor called Renan Feldman. He is an NLP expert. So I got exposed to all of the NLP machine learning technologies while working for that project. And we did an amazing final project where we were trying to find correlations. At the time, it was between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and they were like running for the elections, and we tried to automate and understand the correlations between their daily tweets and the change in the daily polls the day after. And so we built a robot that knew how to extract all the tweets and understand them, and understand what is the topics of these tweets and what's the sentiment around these tweets. And we found really crazy correlations. We found that like, I think that the number one thing that really moved the needle was them trashing about each other and not talking about any really important things. We also saw that when Hillary got sentimental in specific topics, then the daily poll usually went down for her. And when Trump got sentimental, saying the same topics, he usually got up. And that's, probably because of many gender issues and things like that. But we found like really interesting correlations. And that was the first introduction to machine learning technologies for me.
Oh, and I think that's a both an interesting and fun application, also, kind of a bit real world, and so it gives you a lot of great insights as to how you might apply that, or apply some of that machine learning. So now, as you're going along and doing that, and you're studying, getting the MBA, studying those things, I think at some point while you were a student, then after you graduated, you started working for or someone else's startup. Is that right?
True. Yep. I worked for a startup called Talk Media. It was backed by JVP, one of the biggest VCs in Israel. And I started as a student. I was the QA there. And with more luck than brains, I actually ended up being their CTO. And I worked there for about 4.5 years. And it was really more luck than brain, because I was relatively affordable, and I had tons of passion, and they just couldn't afford the mega star CTO. So they just I just got there, and once I was there, I had a huge support from the CEO Ron, which is actually part of the C-level team today in Vizio. We're working together again, but I had a huge support from him to become a proper CTO. I was like totally afraid and intimidated by this mega position out there, but he was so encouraging, and he believed in me. And at the end of the day, I owe him so much due to that, because I got exposed to all the managerial aspect of starting a startup, becoming a partner in a startup. I was added to all those important meetings together with Ron, and I actually learned so much about every single aspect of a startup from bottom to top.
That's awesome, and that's always a great insight to have. I mean, there's a difference between having a good idea or getting it in, and developing it, versus getting it out in the marketplace. And why people think, hey, all it takes is a good idea and implementation. There's a lot more to the business side, and to get that exposure early on definitely sounds like it was beneficial. So now, as you're bit working for the startup, going along and doing all those things, and learning along the way, at what point did you decide you wanted to go do your own startup, or kind of what prompted kind of saying, hey, I'm getting a lot of experience, getting a lot of insight, which is awesome and great. Now I want to kind of go my own way or do my own thing. At what point did you kind of, what triggered that, and what prompted to go in that direction?
Right. So I think I owe this a lot to Idan, my partner. He came to me after a few good years that I was working in talk media, and he said, "Hey, Adam, listen, you're one of the most creative people I know, and together we're a very, very good team. Let's start a startup together." And I was like, "Hey, buddy Dan, we don't have an idea, we don't have this, we don't have that." And he was like, "Don't worry about it, we'll be fine. And and I'll send you some materials to go over them and dwell on it." And it was like he really pumped me up, and he pushed so many materials to me. And eventually, after about, I don't know, maybe 2 months, I said, "You know what, Idan, you're totally right. I can see the opportunity." We understood that there's a huge opportunity in the emerging creator economy. It was about 6 years ago, maybe 5.5 years ago. It wasn't as obvious as today that it's such an amazing, amazing, amazing market. At the time, it was a relatively small market. You had a few Kardashians out there, nothing too serious. But we saw the huge potential, and we saw the trend, and we also understood that the cheaper mobile phones will be, the cheaper video cameras will be, we will see more and more and more creators out there. And the market today is exploding with 50 million creators out there, and it's expected to be 150 creators by 2025. So our assumptions were very, very right to start building solutions for that market.
Oh, and that definitely makes sense. So you have, you had some encouragement, you had some or teammates and team members that you're saying, "Hey, this will be a great experience or great opportunity. How do I pass it up?" type of a thing. And so you go along and you do that. Now, one of the additional questions that, that comes up is, there's a difference when you make the leap, or you move or make that leap forward, as to going out, doing your own startup and moving forward on that. Was it everything that you'd anticipated? It was smooth sailing and everything went perfectly and the business got up and going? Was it bumpy or rocky, or kind of how did that go along the way?
Right. So it's a great question. So I remember the first day ever that we started working together. We got accepted to this accelerator here in Jerusalem, and we got a desk. We had a bottle of whiskey and two pretty faces. That's everything we had. We arrived, and we had like no idea where to start from, what to do, and we just drank the whole bottle of whiskey within a few days. And we slowly started to speak with people and do some research, and like we saw the lean start. We were at the lean startup. We saw how to start a startup from YC. Such a great session of lectures there, and at the beginning, because of the fact that we are both engineers, so we managed to build a very beautiful MVP with zero cost and very relatively very quickly. So after building that MVP, we knocked on a few doors of I would say, mostly Jerusalemite investors. Out of 7 investors we reached out to, 5 immediately said we're in. So for us, it was very relatively a very easy start. I'm not implying on the rest of the journey. I'm just saying that it was a relatively easy start. We worked on the MVP for like 2 months, and after 2 months we already got our first yes from investors. So we had a lot of luck there.
That definitely sounds like it was an exciting journey, able to get to a quick MVP, get people on board, and be able to kind of hit things out of the gates quickly, which is always a great place to be. So now just kind of for the audience, how long, so you started the business, and I think at one point, when, or I guess to a couple of questions, but when did you initially start that business, or when did that get kicked off for you?
Right. So we quit our jobs in 2016. We started working on our first startup, on our first idea. We called it Scaleabout. And Scaleabout was a solution for the long tail of creators. It was a machine learning solution that solved the exposure problem of the long tail. We didn't want social media creators to rely on the social media platforms to get exposure. So we built Scaleabout that knew how to take their content from the social media and post it outside the social media in a very interesting and smart way. So we built an MVP. It took us a few months. We got funded. Then we started this pilot with a very big publisher, and yeah, and we ran the company for about 3 years until we pivoted to Vizio.
That's awesome. And so now you're saying, okay, you ran that company, had some initial ideas. Now, what prompted the pivot to what's now Vizio, as well as the rebranding a bit? Was it, slow acceptance in the marketplace? Was it a better path forward, or kind of what prompted that switch of that change over to kind of what you guys are providing now?
Right. So when we got funded at 2016, publishers were our real estate. Publishers were our solution, where we actually posted the social media content. And at the time, they were a little more dominant than what they were in 2017, 18, 19. And eventually, at 2019, we understood that publishers are kind of like a declining player. Their publishers today are definitely not like publishers they used to be 10 years ago. And I project that they won't be, as close to what they are today in 10 years from now, because of many reasons. So we understood that our solution is relying on a declining player, and we really, really didn't want that. And actually, one of our design partners, just out of the blue, told us one day, okay, we're stopping the collaboration. You're an amazing product, but I need to sell my real estate to abusive ads because I need money. So at the end of the day, publishers told us, guys, you're amazing. I really want to use your solution, but your solution is a little less better than the horrible abusive ad system that I can use. And this is what I prefer to do. It's not that I don't care about my readers, but they had to have some sort of source of income that is stable. So eventually, at the end of the day, we got replaced by one of our major design partners, and that was a huge wake-up call. The second thing that happened that led us to pivot to Vizio was that I actually became a social media creator myself. And once I was a social media creator myself, I saw the huge opportunity that we're solving today at Vizio. So, and that's a really great personal, positive story. If you want, I'd love to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so about a few years ago, I had an early midlife crisis. I was overweight, and I decided that I want to make a change in my life. So I decided that I wanted to become a ninja warrior. I don't know why, I don't know how, I didn't know anything about it, but I just signed up for the auditions, and I started training, and eventually, I got in. I lost 25 kilos. I started climbing, and I learned all about how to become a ninja warrior. And actually, I documented my journey on Instagram. I opened an Instagram channel and posted everything about weight loss and transformation and climbing and entrepreneurship and ninja warrior. And I gained a few thousands of followers. And once I gained a few thousands of followers, I said, hey, I'm part of the creator economy. Let's make money. So I took a look at the existing solutions, and I saw that none of the solutions fit me because I wasn't big enough to do marketing. I wasn't expert enough to offer courses, and I wasn't famous enough to offer shout outs. I wasn't trendy enough to sell merch, and I wasn't committed enough to offer exclusive content on Patreon, for example, such an amazing company. And I wasn't committed enough or business-oriented enough to build communities and websites. So at the end of the day, I saw that, I have great following, I have great content, I have an amazing channel, but I have no way to monetize my channel. And then taking a look at the market, we've noticed that I am part of a way bigger wave we call Gen 3 creators, which are 80% of this market who don't have a substantial way or sustainable way to make any money and to earn from their channel and from their assets. And then I noticed that my followers are reaching out to me through the DMs of Instagram. They wanted more from me. They wanted my opinion, my advice, my love, my attention, my feedback. And they just reached out to me trying to understand how I coped with being overweight and how to do a transformation and where to start from, and questions about Ninja Warrior and entrepreneurship. And some people just wanted 5 minutes of my time, and I totally ignored all of them. And the reason I ignored them is not because I don't care about them, but because I had no way to manage all of these incoming approaches. And then we had the aha moment. Then we understood something that nobody understood before. We understood that every creator is a potential mentor, advisor, and even a friend, but they just don't know it yet. And this is how Vizio was born. Vizio empowers all creators to become mentors, advisors, and friends with solutions that suit the long tail and their needs.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like that's a cool journey. So just to wrap it up, just curious. So you went on to Ninja War and you competed, is that right? Or did you
I did.
almost, or how did
No,
that
I
end?
did.
How'd that part end up for you?
I got accepted to the show, and it was a blast. And then up until today, I take part of every season since here in Israel.
That's awesome. That's a cool goal to set, and definitely exciting that you were able to take part in that. So no, that and that was it sounds like a great journey, and kind of interesting how you figured that out as to where the current company with Vizio is going to be or position itself is based on a lot of your own experience of kind of going through and figuring out how to position it for yourself. So definitely is very interesting. Well, now as we kind of reach the present point of where you're at in your journey today, it's a great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
Yeah. Well, there are many mistakes that we made. I think we made more mistakes than non-mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that looking back, I think that our biggest business mistake was actually not closing the company when we pivoted. I think that at the time, it kind of makes sense to pivot because we still had some cash in the bank, and we had a lot of support from our investors, and it was very intuitive to pivot, and everything just made sense. But looking back, these days, we're an old company, right? So we're instead of being a 2.5-year-old company or a 2-year-old company, we're a 5-year-old company, and it really makes it hard to raise money because investors want to know what's happening, and you always have to explain yourself. Oh no, listen, we've been a different company and we're recapping the cap table anyway, and everything's gonna be fine. Don't worry about the founder shares. We've got enough. We've reached an agreement, but it always requires me as a CEO and a fundraiser to explain myself instead of having this wow effect, telling future investors, hey, we're a 2-year-old company. Look at what we've achieved so far. So I think that, looking back, knowing what I know today, I would definitely close the company and reopen it from the beginning. I would give, the opportunity for all of our investors to rejoin, of course. We extremely appreciate them, each and every one of them. They're extremely supportive, but I think that would make our lives very easy, or way easier than it is today, to fundraise and to deal with all the cap table and all the equity issues and the mess that is there due to a pivot.
No, and I think that it is an interesting dichotomy, because investors, especially get into venture capital, they're going to want an upward trajectory, right? They want to see that, hey, if we put in money, we're pouring gasoline on the fire, so to speak, and it's going to make the company take off. Well, if you're going through a pivot, or if you're figuring things out or having to go in a different direction, either by choice or by necessity, either one, then it's going to introduce those questions as to, hey, do we want to invest in a company that's not doing well, or it's been on hiatus for a couple of years, or it's kind of peaked, or is going downward? And I certainly get the qualm of, the quandary of now you're having to explain and dance around that. And sometimes, to your point, is maybe you're better to shut down that business. And then even if it's the investors that were on there previously, give them a arrangement that makes it beneficial for them to join again, and so they're not losing out, but at the same time, it makes it easier to go out and fundraise more. So I think that's definitely a great, certainly an understandable mistake to make, but a good lesson to learn.
Definitely. And I wish I would know that earlier, but sometimes you just have to make those mistakes to learn.
Absolutely. No, I think that, sometimes it is those, while it'd be nice if you could go back and not make the mistakes, you also have a lot of times the opportunity to learn more from those mistakes, that you then are not making that same mistake again. So I think that there's definitely that balance. So, well, now the second question I always ask is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Right. So I think the number one advice would be to speak with as many people as you can, but always know how to listen and what to learn from every type of conversation, from every interaction. And I'll try to like break it down just a little bit. When we started the startup, like when you speak about, when I tell people that I'm a founder of a startup, they always say, "Oh, are you okay with sharing your idea?" And this is like this is from the past. This is a conception from the past where everything has to be very secretive, and you can't share your idea to anyone because they'll steal your idea and do it. But it doesn't work like that today. Your idea will change a million times, and it's not about stealing your idea. It's about the team, and it's about implementing your ideas into reality. And that's why I really encourage everyone to discuss your idea with as many smart people as possible. You don't talk about it with your grandma unless it's a grandma startup. But on the other end, always be true to yourself and try to really extract the gems out of every piece of advice. Try to understand what is behind what people are trying to say while going through your agenda. So you'll always fine tune your idea and with the help of the crowd. And I think maybe if I could also add to that advice, never ask people if your idea is a good idea or not. This is not a good question to ask. The market always wins. Do you want to know if your idea is good or not? Ask the market. And do the best to release a POC in the most fastest time, as less resources as possible, and go and ask the market. If half of the companies would ask people, do you think it's a good idea? The companies that we know today, they would say no before they even existed. Like the best example would be a tablet, right? Before the tablet, nobody wanted or thought that a tablet would be necessary, and now it's a huge chunk of the market, and I can give you a million ideas out there. So you want to know if your startup if it's a good idea, go and ask the market.
Oh, and I think that is an absolutely a great takeaway. And I think, because you have to be careful. If you're to ask a few people, I like the example, whether it's a tablet, whether it's even the smartphone at the time, when Apple came out with that, and keep on with the Apple example, BlackBerry was out there and people say, but I want my little keyboard. And until you experience, until you understand it, sometimes they're just not going to grasp it. And so putting out that, kind of quick, minimally viable product, or kind of that initial offering, so people can understand and grasp it, and then go out and test it and get their feedback and understand that. I like that as the one thing you hit on. The other one is, I think, having an intentionality to the conversations you're having, or at least taking advantage. If you're in front of someone that has a lot of knowledge, that has a lot of experience, and they could help it elevate your business, you'd be a fool not to take advantage of that conversation and to learn those things as you're talking with them. So I think those are great, both great takeaways, and definitely a good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Well, now as we wrap up the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, or find out more?
Well, I think my best business card will be my Instagram account. It's Adam bottom line FRX. And you could always find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the other media channels out there.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out to you, connect with you, and otherwise be a customer and support you guys. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Feel free to go to inventiveguest.com and apply to be on the show. Couple more things. Make sure to click listen or click subscribe. Make sure to click share. Make sure to leave us a review, because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all of these awesome episodes. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your business, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always happy to help. Thank you again, Adam, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Devin.